When you look at a huge skyscraper or an ancient cathedral, what's the one thing that decides if it'll stand for centuries or just crumble? It's all about the foundation. Well, the Bible uses that exact same idea to explain the church, and it all boils down to this really powerful metaphor, a rock. So let's dig in and figure out what that actually means for us. Okay, so let's just start with the biggest question right off the bat. What is the church? I mean, really, is it the building we go to on Sundays? Is it a certain denomination? Is it this big global organization? Seriously, if you ask 10 different people, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. And honestly, that can get super confusing really fast. So to cut through all that confusion and all the different opinions, we've got to go right back to the source. Let's take a look at what the founder and, the main architect of the church, Jesus himself, actually had to say about his own project. Now, here's something that might actually surprise you. In all four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the word church is only said by Jesus, and he only says it twice. Just 2 times. That should tell us something, right? It means that when he does use that word, we need to lean in and listen really, really carefully, because you just know every single word is going to count. So even before he gets to the word church, Jesus kind of sets the stage with this story about 2 guys building houses. One dude builds his house on solid rock, and when the storms come, it doesn't budge. The other guy builds on sand, and, well, it's a total disaster. The point is super simple, but it is massive. The foundation is everything. Okay, so if the foundation is that important, what exactly is this storm-proof, unshakable base that the church is supposed to be built on? Well, thankfully, Jesus makes it incredibly clear. And here it is. This is the big moment where it all clicks. Jesus asks his crew, "Who do you guys say I am?" And Peter just nails it. He says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus' response is amazing. He basically says, that truth you just said, that confession about who I am, that is the rock that I'm going to build my entire church on. So the big takeaway here is that the church's strength, its stability, it doesn't come from having a cool worship band or a popular pastor or even a really nice building. Its strength comes directly from its foundation. And since that foundation is Jesus Christ himself, the church is designed to be completely and totally unshakable. But this whole metaphor gets even deeper and more specific. The Bible doesn't just call Christ the foundation, it uses a really precise building term that tells us even more about how this whole church thing is supposed to work. So back in the day, when you were building something important, the cornerstone was absolutely everything. It was the very first stone you'd lay down, and every other single stone in the entire building was lined up according to that one stone. If the cornerstone was perfect, the whole building would be straight and strong. But if it was off by even a little bit, the whole structure was messed up. And this is exactly what the book of Ephesians tells us. It says Jesus is the chief cornerstone. He's the main reference point. He sets the angle and the direction for the entire building. And every other part of the church, that includes you and me, only finds its right place when it's lined up with him. Now, you can probably guess that because this is God's personal building project, it comes with a pretty serious warning for anyone who thinks they can mess with the plans or, try to build on a totally different foundation. And let's be really clear about this. Trying to fight against what Christ is building isn't some small thing. The architect of the universe takes any opposition to his project very, very seriously. And the consequences he describes are, well, they're intense. Jesus himself gives this very stark warning. This rock, this foundation, it's an unstoppable force. You really only have 2 options. You can build your life on it, or you can run into it. And as you can imagine, running into it is a terrible, terrible idea. So this warning lays out 2 pretty disastrous outcomes for anyone who rejects the cornerstone. First, if you trip over it, if you actively oppose it, you'll be broken. But then there's the second part. If that rock falls on you in judgment, you'll be completely crushed, just ground to powder. It's an incredibly powerful and honestly a pretty sobering image. But this rock isn't just some powerful, unmoving, scary object. No, it's so much more dynamic than that. In fact, the Bible gives us 3 more incredible descriptions of what kind of stone Christ really is. First up, and this is a wild idea, he is a living stone. Think about that.
This isn't just some dead piece of granite we're talking about. Because Christ rose from the dead, the very foundation of the church is alive. And a living foundation gives life to everything that's built on it, and that includes every single person who is a part of it. The Apostle Peter describes it perfectly right here. He says we come to Jesus, the living stone. And even though he was rejected by people, in God's eyes, he is chosen and incredibly precious.
And that brings us to the second description. He is a precious stone. I want you to picture a flawless diamond or some other incredible jewel. Precious stones are valued because they're beautiful, they're perfect, they're rare. That describes Christ perfectly. His value is just beyond calculation. And for those who know him, he is the most beautiful and treasured reality in the entire universe.
But there is a third aspect, and it's a really challenging one. For people who reject him and disobey him, the same beautiful, life-giving, precious stone becomes a stumbling stone, a rock of offense. So, why? Why would something so good and precious cause people to stumble? Well, it all comes down to his exclusive claims. See, Jesus didn't say, hey, I'm a way to God. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And in a world that absolutely loves having lots of options, the idea that there's only one way, that's offensive to a lot of people. It's a rock they just keep tripping over.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. The church, which is built on this living, precious, and yes, sometimes stumbling stone, has the ultimate guarantee. It's not guaranteed to win because the people in it are so great, but because the rock it's built on is unshakable and unstoppable. It will survive and it will triumph in the end.
And that leaves us with one last, really crucial question. This isn't about an institution or a building. It's about you, personally. Is your life being built on the sand of changing opinions, temporary feelings, and what other people think? Or is it being built on the unshakable, living, and precious rock, Jesus Christ? Because the foundation you choose, that's going to determine everything.